have shared all the files that we need to use in this class. Feel free to grab them. The link is in the description of this video, or you can actually check the pinned comment on this video. The two files that I'm talking about are this one right here. One is a list of names. It is a text file. So I'll go ahead and open it. This is how it looks like. It might open in any text editor that you have in your PC. Mine here is opening in a notepad. So it's just a simple list of names, and it's the file that we are going to be using throughout this particular session. The second file is an Excel test or exam that we are supposed to attempt together in a later video, so that we can test our different skills on how to deal with text data manipulation and the different features and functions that we're going to be learning in this particular class. So if you are not yet subscribed to this YouTube channel, I encourage you to please do, especially if you like this type of content, so that you don't miss any future classes like this. So the first thing that we shall do is to head over to our text file and copy this list of names and paste inside our Excel. So I'll do Control A to highlight the entire list, Control C for copying. I can now minimize my text file, come back to the Excel file, and I paste these values in this particular cell. I'll choose cell A1. Let me just zoom in a little bit so that you can see clearly. So I'll do Control V. So you can see that I've finished pasting a list of names inside my Excel. And every time you copy data from external sources and paste this data inside Excel, you might get this data in this particular behavior. So you can see as if this list of names is actually sitting in one single row. That is row 1. This is wrong. This list is actually sitting in only one single cell. If you actually clicked in cell A1, you can see this is the cell address that has all the list of names that we have just pasted inside our Excel. When I click in cell B1, you can see in our formula bar there is nothing. I come over to cell C1, there is nothing in our formula bar. So the entire list is actually sitting in cell A1. So what are we required to do first? The first thing that we need to do is to separate these names into each individual column. We could do this manually by actually coming in and copying each name individually, but this would take us ages, especially if we had a big data set. So what we need to do is to actually click in the cell that has the list of names, and you move on to Data tab. Under the Data Tools, you click on the Text to Columns feature. This will open the Convert Text to Columns wizard. It is a 3-step wizard, and by default, you can see it defaults to a fixed width option. I'll be telling you in a moment what this one does, but let us switch it to the limited option, because we have identified the delimiter that is actually separating between these names. So I'll say next. You can see the different delimiters that we currently have. Right now, by default, it is actually checking the tab. I will remove the check mark of the tab and place it on the semicolon. And as soon as I do that, you can see in the data preview that each single name is now split in its own individual column. What I can do, I can finish from here, click finish, and there you go. All our names have been completely split into their own individual columns. Wow, thank you very much for doing that if you're following along. Now, the next requirement is to transpose these names. Now that they are sitting in one single row, we would like to have these names transposed into one single column, and that is column A. So I'll come over to column A and create a column heading. There are two options that we can use here. We can either use the paste special command, or we can actually use the transpose function. So let us go with the transpose function first. So I'll create a column heading, call it transpose. I'll just give it a background fill of yellow, and now we can write our transpose formula in here. So I'll say equals transpose. So the transpose function requires that you give it an array. It requires only one argument, and our array is cell A1, and I will do Control Shift right pointing arrow to highlight the entire array and close off this transpose function and hit enter key on the keyboard. Immediately I do that, you can see that all the names are now sitting in one single column. So this is the first option of using the formula method. But if you're running an older version of Office, your transpose function may not work properly. The second option is using the paste special command. So I'll create another column heading and call it paste special. I'll also give it a background color. Now we need to transpose these names into column B using the paste special command. So what I need to do is to highlight my entire list of names in row 1, Control C on the keyboard for copying. Now I can come back to the cell address where I want to print my names. So I click in cell B4 and under the home ribbon tab on the paste command, I'll click in the drop down list. This will give me more functionalities. We have the paste, we have paste values, we have other paste options. Now what I'm interested in is this paste special command, and the shortcut is Ctrl Alt V. So I'll click paste special. This will open the paste special dialog box, and what I need to do here is to choose this option, transpose. So I'll place a check mark in here and say okay. Immediately I do that, you can see that our names are now transposed into one single column. At one point in time, we might be required to split these names back into either first name, middle name, and last name. So how do we do that? I'll come here and create another column heading. I'll call this one first name, middle name, and last name. Okay, so we'd like to split these names furthermore into each individual column. Again, this could be a requirement at one point in time, so I'd like to show you how to do that as well. So the first option that we may use here is the flash fill feature. Now the flash fill feature requires that you just give it a pattern and then it will pick it up from there and give you a prediction. Now if I want to only extract the first names, so I'll start typing here Matovu from the first record. I come over to the second record and I start typing Gole. Immediately I start doing that, you can see that Excel is predicting, are you interested in extracting only the first names? So this is called a flash fill functionality. If I'm comfortable, then I just hit enter key on the keyboard and there you go. You can see I get all my names returned. Now if I want to extract the middle name, I would literally come here and start typing Charles. Come over to the second record and start typing Sowedi. Immediately I start typing Sowedi, you see Excel guesses for me that, are you interested in extracting the middle name? If that is what I need, I just press enter key on the keyboard and this will do the magic. Now let us just Ctrl Z and go back to where we started from so that I can show you how to use the text to column feature to also achieve the same results. So I'll highlight these names, Ctrl Shift down pointing arrow to highlight the entire list of names, and now I'll head over to the data tab and pick the text to columns feature, and in here of course we are going to identify the delimiter, or that character that is separating between these names, and this time the delimiter is a space, because in the first scenario we saw the delimiter was a semicolon, but in this particular list right here, after transposing our list, the character that is separating between the names or between Matovu and Charles is a space. So I'll say next. I remove the check mark of the semicolon and place it onto the space. Immediately I do that, you can see now I get a split. Matovu is sitting in their own column and Charles is also sitting in their own column. If someone had 3 names, then the third name would also be sitting in the last column, which is our last name column right there. Now I'll say next so that I can move over to the third step. You need to pay attention on this third step, because right now if we actually finished our operation from here, the results will be printed in this same column where we have our original dataset. I don't want to do that because I will lose this particular original dataset. So what I will do, under the destination, I remove the cell address that is there and point this one to cell C4. So this is where I want to print my results, and now I can finish my operation from here. I click finish and there you go. You can see the first name, the middle name, and the last name have been extracted from the list of names that are sitting in one single column. The other thing that we may want to do is to convert this list of names into capital letters. So I'll create a column here and call it capital letters. So I'll actually expand a little bit, and now we need to use a function called upper. So the upper function converts text data from small letters to capital letters. So I'll say equals upper, I open brackets. The upper function requires only one single argument. You just give it the text that you're interested in converting. So in this case, we're interested in converting this particular names. So I close off the brackets and hit enter key on the keyboard. You can now see that our text has been converted into capital letters all the way through. Now, if I want to populate the rest of these values, I can double click to send this formula down, and there you go. All our names are now in capital letters. Now, the vice versa is you might want to convert into small letters. So what you need to do, I'll create a column header here and call it small letters. So this is the opposite of capital letters. So what you need to do here is to use the lower function. I'll say equals lower, I open brackets. The lower function also requires only one single argument. So I'll give it the text that I would like to convert into lower text. Close off the brackets, hit enter key on the keyboard, so I can double click to send this formula down, and all the names will be converted. Now, you may also want to make sure that only the first character of each name is a capital letter. So I'll come here and say proper, and in here I'll say equals proper, open brackets. The proper function also requires that you give only one argument, so I'll point it to the small letters that we have just converted, close off brackets, hit enter, and now we have our names starting with a capital letter and the rest of the characters are small letters. So that's called a proper function. Now, the other thing that we can do is, for example, if someone asked you to extract only the first two characters of each first name, what function do you need to use? We use the left function. So you'll come here and create a column heading and call it left. And what we need to do is to extract only two characters of the first name. So I'll say equals left. The left function has only two arguments. Give me the text and also the number of characters that you'd like me to extract starting from the left. So we'd like to extract of this particular text, comma, and the second argument is the number of characters. We only want to extract two characters, so I put a 2 in there, close off my left function and hit enter key. So I can double click the fill handle to send this formula down. Now you might be asking yourself, if I wanted to extract from the right, yes, you guessed it right, we have a function called right. So you come here and say equals right, open brackets. The right function also requires only two arguments. Give me the text and the number of characters you'd like me to extract, counting or starting from the right. So we'd like to extract only two characters from this name starting from the right. Hit enter key. You can see we get the returned. I can double click the fill handle to send this formula down. Now, you may also want to extract from the middle. Yes, we have the mid function. So I'll create another column heading and call it mid. Now, for example, we may want to extract the mid two characters or the middle two characters starting from the third character. So let's say equals mid. So this one has three arguments. So we shall give it the text, comma. We would like it to start extracting from the third character. So I put a 3, comma, and I'm interested in extracting only two characters because the mid function doesn't know the mid position or the midpoint of each of your text because the text or the names have varying length. So you need to specify the starting point. This is the second argument called the start number. And we only want to extract two characters. So I put a 2 for the last argument, close the mid function and hit enter key on the keyboard. You can see TO is extracted from this particular name. So we are starting to extract from the third character. So it counts 1, 2, 3. So it will start with T and it will only extract 2 characters. So that's why you see TO returned using the mid function. I'll show you how to use these functions when we start working on our test. Now let us see what else we can do. There is another function called CONCAT or concatenate. So what this function does is that it combines text strings together. So what we want to do is to combine these names back together into one single column, if that was the requirement. So we use the concat function. I'll say equals concat. So the concat function requires that you give it the text that you'd like to combine. I can say this range, close off the brackets and enter on the keyboard. But watch what happens. This one is combining the names without a space in between. So you can see Matov Charles combined all the way through without a space in between. So if we want to introduce a space in here, I'll just Control Z. I say equals concat. I'll give the first name that I would like to combine. I say comma. Now because I want to introduce a space in between the names, I will introduce it in its own argument. So argument number 2, I'll open quotes and say space, close quotes, comma. So that is our second character. The third one will be our middle name, comma, and the fourth text will now be another space. So I open quotes, space, close quotes, comma, and now I can select our last name. So in case the person had 3 names, they would all be combined together, but leaving a space, a single space in between each name. So I can close off this concat function and hit enter key on the keyboard, and there you go. You can see now our name is combined back into one single name sitting in one single column using the concat function. Similarly, if you don't use the concat function to combine text strings together, you can use the concatenate function. So I'll stroke this and say concatenate. So these 2 functions do the same. If we want to use another function, we would use the TEXTJOIN. So I'll create another column and call it TEXTJOIN. So the TEXTJOIN function also combines text strings in Excel. So I'll say equals TEXTJOIN. So the TEXTJOIN function has a number of arguments that it requires. The first one is a delimiter. I'll show you in another video how you can use this particular argument. But for this example, we shall ignore the delimiter. So I'll put a comma. And we also ignore the second argument, that's the ignore empty argument. I'll say comma. Now we can provide our text that we'd like to join. The first one, of course, will be the first name, comma. And because we want to introduce a space in between, I'll say open quotes, space, close quotes, comma. We can now point to the middle name and say comma. And because we want a space in between the middle name and the last name, I'll open quotes, space, close quotes, comma, and now I can point to our last name. I close off this particular TEXTJOIN function and hit enter key on the keyboard. This will give us the same results like how the concat and the concatenate function did. I can double click the fill handle to send this formula down. Alternatively, if we don't use the TEXTJOIN function, we can use a manual method where we need to apply the ampersand. So I'll create another column and call this one ampersand. So what is that ampersand symbol that I'm referring to? When you check on your keyboard, you'll see an and symbol. Some people call it an and symbol. So I'll put it in brackets. This is the ampersand that we are referring to. We can use this particular symbol to combine text strings. So this is what I would have done if I used this approach. Equals, you point to the first name, ampersand, you put a space, open quotes, in there you put a space, close the quotes, you put another space, ampersand, and then you join it with the middle name. Hit enter key on the keyboard, and there you go. You get your names combined. I can use the fill handle to send everything down. Now, something else that we can do is to create an email address for these names. So I'll create another column heading and I call it email address. So the email address requires that we combine all these three names, convert them in small letters all the way through, and concatenate it with our domain name. In this particular example, we shall use @opentrainingcamp.com. So that's the email we'd like to create right here. So I'll say equals concat. I concatenate these names first, close off the concat function, hit enter key. You can see all of them have been combined. What I need to do is to convert them into lower. So I come at the beginning and open the lower function. So what the lower function does is it converts what the concat is combining into small letters. So I close the lower function and hit enter key. Now I have Matov Charles without any spaces in between. Now what I need to do is to either use my ampersand or to concatenate this with my domain name. So what I will do, I'll come over to this first cell and in the formula bar, I'll say ampersand to concatenate. I put a space, open quotes. I need to open my @ symbol at opentrainingcamp.com. I close off my quotes and hit enter key on the keyboard. My email is created. When I double click the field handle to send this one down, each individual name will get their own email address. So the other thing that we might want to do is to create a unique password for each individual email. So I'll come over here and create another column heading and call it password. So the requirements for the password are very simple. We are only interested in the first two characters of the first name, the last two characters of the middle name, and then we want to concatenate that one with @1234. So the password for the first record should look like this. If I can do it manually, it should be MAES, because I'm looking at MA. These are the first two characters of this first name, and ES, these are the two most last characters from the right on the middle name. And then I want to concatenate this with the @1234. So this should be a unique password for each email that we have just created. So how do we do this? Using the text functions that we have just learned about. So I'll come here and say equals left. Remember the left function that we did talk about. I'm interested in extracting the first two characters of this name, and the number of characters is 2. I close the left function and hit enter key. I get an MA. Now I need to concatenate this with the last two characters of the middle name. So that means I'll open the concat function. So when I open my concat function, the first character is being delivered by the left. Now what I need to do is to put a comma, and the second character will be delivered by the right function. So I open the right function and I point to my middle name, and the number of characters I'm interested in, 2 characters. I close off the right function. I close off the concat from here. Hit enter key on the keyboard. You can see I get MAES. So at this level, what I need to do is to come over to my formula bar and use my ampersand to introduce the @1234 to complete this unique password for each email. So I'll put a space, open quotes, @1234, close quotes, and hit enter key on the keyboard. So this is the unique password for this first email that we created. I can double click to send this formula down. Another text function that we may need most to make sure that we can answer our exam or Excel test that I did show you in the first place is the search or the find function. So what this search function does, I'll open another column heading and call it search. So what the search function is that you give it the character and it searches the position of that character in a given text string. So for example, if they asked you letter T is position number what in this particular name, so you'd come here and say equals search. So we are searching for what? And we are searching for letter T. So I close quotes. Where are we searching for this particular character from? We are searching it from within this text. Okay, I close off the search function from here. I ignore the last argument because you can see the last argument is in square brackets, so it is an optional argument. I can close off the search from here, hit enter key. So you can see that the search function tells us that letter T is actually sitting in position number 3. Similarly, if we don't use the search function, we can use the find function. So I'll say equals find. What are we finding? These two functions work exactly the same. We are finding for letter T, comma, where are we finding it from? We are finding it from this particular text string. Close off the find function, hit enter key on the keyboard. So both the search function and the find function will tell us that letter T in this particular text string or name is sitting in position number 3. Another important text function that you may need is the trim function. So what the trim function does is that it removes all leading and trailing spaces within your text strings. For example, if I actually came to this particular column D where we have our middle name, you can clearly see that there is either leading or trailing spaces in these names. I can double click in the first record and you can see where my cursor is active. That means there is a space in between where the cursor is blinking from and the last character that is visible to us. But before we trim off these spaces, we need to introduce ourselves to another function called the len function. So I'll come here and say len function. So the len function tells us the length of any given text string. So I'll say equals len. I point it to this particular name and close brackets. Hit enter key. This one tells us that this particular name has 11 characters. This is not true because you can see Charles has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 characters. But the len function is telling us that this name has a total of 11 characters. It's because there are extraneous spaces in this particular cell, which we need to get rid of. So I'll double click the fill handle to count all the characters for each particular name. Now, let us actually trim off the extra spaces. I say equals trim. I trim off any extraneous spaces in this particular middle name. I close off the trim function, hit enter key. I get Charles returned back. I can double click this and send it down. Now let us count once more. I'll introduce another len column right there and say equals len. I count our trimmed results, close the len function, enter, and you can see now I have 7 characters returned. I can double click to send this one down. Now the other funny part is you may be asked to count how many extraneous spaces are sitting in any given text string. Before you actually apply the trimming or counting the length of a text string, they may ask you, do we have any extraneous spaces? We can create another column and we call it spaces, or we can say count of spaces as a column heading. So I'll come back here and try to count how many extraneous spaces are sitting in this particular cell. So to do that, we use a combination of the len function and the trim function. So we need a calculation, and the calculation is very simple. So I'd literally say equals len. So you can see the len function is delivering the count of the entire characters, including the extraneous spaces. Our interest is to understand how many extraneous spaces are sitting in this cell. So I'll say minus, I'll come over to the formula bar and say minus the length of the trimmed text this time. So I can close off my trim function and close off my len function. So what this function does is that the first len is giving us 11 minus this particular second function should be giving us 7. So 11 minus 7 should be giving us the extra spaces. These are 4 extra spaces in this particular cell. So when I double click this in the fill handle, you can see we have 3 extraneous spaces here. We have 2 extraneous spaces here that are not easily visible. We have 4 extra spaces in this particular cell, and in here we have no extra spaces. Now remember that we have to use this knowledge of text functions that we have gone through to answer our text, and here are the instructions. So that is the next video that you're seeing on your screen right now. If you'd like to attempt this test with us, watch that video that is showing on your screen right now, or you can actually download this file from the link in the description of this video, or you can check the pinned comment so that you can try this test on your own and test your text function skills. See you in that video. Thank you for watching. Bye.